Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Madden with God. I'm Max, your host, and I'm here with the wonderful, the amazing Roxanne. How are you today, Roxy?
Good, good. I took a nice shower. I'm all spritzed up. So, yeah, I'm feeling good. It's a good day. And thank you for welcoming to the Madden Guy.
Oh yes, it's always a
And
pleasure.
we welcome our listeners. Hi, listeners.
Welcome. So, we were just talking about what are we going to talk about today, and through my labyrinth of ideas and to bring them to some understanding, we said, well, let's go. We said some episodes ago that we will touch on history, and I think that a way to go into that topic it's to go into it with the idea of what is our memory, personal memory, collective memory, that we then translate into history, uh, and how history is used as right. One thing that of the theme of the thing that is very commonly said, right? If you do not know history, you're gonna repeat it. And recently we exchanged. We said no, it's the knowing of history that brings the repeating, but the here we have one of those way of or a belief system that we have that if you don't know you're gonna repeat, uh, but this right this is how we play the game, how we take things and then we change them. It's like um cogito ergo sum, right? It is translated as I'm thinking, therefore I am, where we say no, I am, therefore I can think. But if I am not, I cannot think. So, right, it's these things that are there and that we have and we use, but then we can take and give them an understanding, a meaning that is misleading. And that is done a lot with history. I don't know what you think, Roxy, but that's how I'm seeing it, right? When I think of history, there is the mainstream, but then the more I'm working on myself, the more I'm working with you and all of this, the less I'm relating to that mainstream history
Yeah,
as
I think, uh, obviously, well, there's a whole bunch of angles on history. Of course, memory is created in the moment, and that's an individual history. But there's also the mass psyche of humanity. That's a history itself. And that mass psyche moves through time. We call it linear time, but it's not necessarily linear. It may appear to be linear, but it's not necessarily to be linear. It's a now idea. But the modern academia of history is always in question with the up and coming constant idea of archaeology is not conforming to the mainstream because it's not so dominated. Let's look at this in an idea of reference. So we're going to make a comparison here. All the TVs, shows, and all the movies were dominated by Hollywood. And then along comes Netflix and Amazon and Hulu. And these studios, these indies, are going out there and they're changing the scope of Hollywood where they don't have the dominance anymore. So now move that equation over to the modern academia. Those ones are in charge. A, they're growing old, so they're dying. And B, the psyche of the young person isn't so conditioned because they're not as gluttonous as the older generation was, and they don't need to harbor their truth so much. And younger generations are like, hey, you have your truth, I have my truth. Have a Coke and a smile. So therefore, we're exposed to different sources that our modern history is absolutely in question because inevitably, if we knew more than what we know now, it would shake the foundations of what we know now. You know, everyone says, the Christ conscience, just for thing, the entire story for reference. So we all know that story. But that entire story, the exact way it was hung out, was played out by an Egyptian idea called Horus. So that whole idea was played out. So how can you have the two exact same stories um, exposed? Well, because the story isn't history of what happened to humanity. The story is about the awakening. But that's a different idea. But the point is that we have two ideas of occurrence, and one doesn't want to be made known. Because if you make known, then it's going to shake the foundations of the modern academia and the truth of the current reality and the way we create our reality with the governments and religions and all these things. But of course, this is just the evolution of it. That's all it is. It's nothing major. It's not a conspiracy theory or catastrophe. It is an absolute idea of evolution. So when I look at history, um, I look at my own, and that's my truth. When I look into the idea of how history cleans it up, if I'm 55, so I read a book that they taught me in school, let's say about the Native Americans, and it's going to be an idea that paints the Native Americans in the pictures of savages. Today's modern book about the Native Americans is not going to be pictured that way. So you can see that we've changed it because of the people in charge, of the structure in charge, and we're still fighting that today. We're still fighting banned books and all this stuff. But again, this whole thing is about evolving a species. So our history itself is not definitely not set in stone, and it's always changing because we're as a mass psyche are moving through the most beneficial idea of awakening the species. So we'll discover other timelines, so to speak, which we call parallel timelines or peripheral timelines, or what have you. And those timelines that are no longer focused on come back into reality, and we change literally our history. And those ideas are happen. So I think it's very interesting how our memory is how we create our history, and the validity of that history is, of course, validated subjectively by each singularity, each creator, and it's also done with the mass idea, the mass psyche. See, the mass psyche is not on board, it ain't going to happen. It's just not going to happen because not enough energy is going to focus, yes, to that truth. But as more and more gain that value, you guys seen it, and they're called fads. Just as a reference point, something started out and people are like, no, 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 no. And all of a sudden, hey, man, this is pretty good shit. Self-driving cars, they're coming, you know. Self-driving farm equipment. John Deere's got a self-driving farm equipment by the year 2030. And before that would have been out crazy, or it's too good to be true. Just like the automobile was looked at as like a passing fad, just like television was looked at as a passing fad. So every idea dynamic of the self creates a reality, and the memory that creates us tell us about the self, of course, in the psyche of humanity. But of course, humans put it in the idea of importance, mattering, standard, fact, something to lean on, something to hold on. They want to make it solid. Because if it's malleable, changeable, then the chaos occurs because no one knows how to handle all of it. And there's nothing really truly to handle. You don't have to handle shit. You're always now, you're always alive. What the hell do you have to handle? So, anyways, that's my take on that, Max.
But I have an example of how memories is created in the moment or and ever changeable, changing. Last Christmas I was in the car with my mother and we were talking and I was asking her questions and so and at some point she tells me about her younger years or childhood, when she used to go with her father to his farm, little farm that he had bought. at retirement. He retired quite early, around 50. And and I had never heard that my grandfather had a farm. That farm never existed in my memory before. Or that version of my grandfather was unknown to me up until that moment. And in that moment, my grandfather had a farm. So yes, it changes, and right, and that's where we have to have that elasticity of mind as where we are now, right? We are aware of these things, so to accept that it's not that I just didn't know or no one ever told me, is that it's a different now, it's a different memory, it's a different relationship to those beings that bring up a farm that was not there before. But the farm was always there, just that it was not in my awareness, in of the knowing of those beings. So it's those things that now we have to just take and see what for what they are, even though then there is no need to really go and dig into it or make anything about that. It's just that we're changing. So our memory changes. And we are in a place where we can be aware of that because we can see it. And we are not just going to take that and deny it and just say, oh, just just that. And so that's the one of the interesting thing with that, right? And I always also think, um, when we talk about our global consciousness, when we now we call it the Mandela effect, because there was some it was so big
Mandela.
that Mandela, yes, that we notice it, right? Globally, we notice, and I, for instance, I remember hearing of the death of that being, and then sometimes later he was just coming out, leaving prison.
Why don't you explain that to people? They don't may not know it. You're
Yeah, we
well,
had a
okay. You got to tell them who it is and what's happening. Tell them.
All right. So Nelson Mandela, right? Nelson Mandela was this activist, this black person in South Africa that was an activist for the rights of his people, right? In a country that was using what we call the apartheid, which is the discrimination in the law. So they were discriminating against black people, and the discrimination was law in the country. So it was not just racism, so being oh not oh, I don't like them, it was that they had to be separated by law. And so he was fighting against that, and so the government put them in prison for years. He spent a lot of time in prison, up until that moment where they said that he died in prison. Um, and so, well, it was assumed by many people that he was dead, up until the moment where, following some negotiation, I guess, they decided to release him. And so he came out of prison, and well, from there he became president of South Africa, and he is considered one of the faces of our 20th, 21st century fight for rights. He fought for well, black people's right in this country, but he was really taken out of that, and quite, I think that some people were seeing him like what we could say a saint, figure. Um, and so what the Mandela effect is that uh, up until a moment, people even remember, right, that he was announced dead, and then there is this change of timeline where he is still alive. So that is why now they're calling that the Mandela effect, even though for many it's just that, oh no, so I must have confused it, or must have heard it wrong, or no, he never died. And there are other example of that kind of thing, but that is what I think, where, right, we talk about history changing. Well, history change in that moment, and it's a mass global consciousness change, because this being has had an impact, um, global impact, right? Global consciousness impact, as for right, fighting for rights, became president of his country, and that kind of thing. So his being still alive has had an impact, um, in our global consciousness. That is, that's why I'm saying this example is an example that is linked to our global consciousness, because that would not have been possible without participation of the global consciousness, right? That's where we decided to have that change. There are other examples. JFK is another example that was told by Bashar, right? Where we have now our history saying that JFK died in 63 in Dallas, right? Where there is another timeline where he died in 84, and not in a attack, was not killed in that way. And so, as Bashar says, the story is that, let's say, there was first the experience of the timeline where he died in 84, but in that timeline, um, what happened was that there was the revelation of life outside Earth, and contact with other beings, and so on, and humanity was not ready for that. So it was decided still, and again, global consciousness, we decided to change that and have him assassinated in 63. So that all
Well,
of that
hang on real quick.
followed.
The mass psyche, just make sure you guys know, the mass psyche didn't decide that he would die. Our mass psyche shifted to the timeline where that event occurred.
Yes, yes,
We
yes.
were on the 1984 timeline death, open contact. It's not preferenced by the collective. Vibrationally, they couldn't adjust, so we shifted to a timeline to where we don't experience that until probably 2035 or 2038, when the collective is more ready to be part of the galactics, open to alien contact, extraterrestrial contact, la di da. So make sure,
Yes.
yeah, for all of you out there, don't
Sorry.
put this as someone's in charge. Don't be sorry. I just want to make that clear. Nobody's in charge. This is all vibrational attraction, okay? Your ego mind might be selling you a story right now, but it's in the internal self that creates realities and vibrational attraction. Keep going.
Yes. So this coming to what Roxy, you were saying, right? History, memory is created in the moment. History is created in the moment, and it changes. And we have here examples of big changes, which, as Roxy was correctly saying, is, and most of the time, is we are changing timelines, right? We are relating to a different timeline that is decided, is more in line with what we are experiencing, with what we want to experience in with the direction that we want to take. As this gives an idea, right? which is what I think it's um, to be understood, is that we are not writing something on any stone or anything that is fixed, right? There is one thing in Doctor Who that makes me always laugh, is that there is this thing that Doctor Who says, oh, this is a point fix in history, you cannot change this. And uh, well, no, everything can be changed, as there isn't just one way of, right? We have multiple, infinite, or whatever you want to say, timeline. So you can, we are experiencing all of that, so we can at any moment shift from one timeline to another, and we can do it personally, or we can do it collectively. It depends on what level of experience we are relating in that moment. So that our history, then it's nothing that we can relate to as anything that is law or truth or anything, because then it changes. Why would it be fixed? We're not fixed ourselves. Why history will be fixed? And I had an experience, a revelation yesterday, something like that, as I was listening about Tolkien's work, but more than a Lord of the Ring, I was listening about his the history, what he wrote, right? All the timeline and all his works. And as I was listening to that, I realized, oh my goodness, this Tolkien channeled about a um, a religion. This is a religion. Is he has creation of the world and all of that, right? There is everything you need in his work, and I realized this is for us. We may put it into mythology, or we may put it into story, right, fantasy, or whatever we want, but I realized this is a religion in a timeline. And uh and it's and I thought, oh, it's really interesting to understand that, because then it changes completely, well, the relationship with Tolkien's work, obviously, but it gives you an understanding, right? All that we have, that we relate to, the religion we have, the countries, even the shape of Earth as we relate to, names, all of that. You change timeline and you have all of that changed, because, right, we relate to these things as they are, as we experience them. And that's right, I'm not saying this is wrong, I'm saying this is absolutely right. But it's, again, it's nothing written, or it's not a law, it's not, it it changes, or it's not that it changes, it's another truth, it's another reality that has other ways of experiencing, of being, of all of that. So it's here we have Christianity, we have Judaism, we have Islam, etc., etc., and then you have other religions that have other names and that we never heard of, but in other timelines they are main religions. And
We've had
right, all
so
of
many
that,
religions on this planet,
yeah,
hundreds of mainstream religions. They're gone because they're not in our memories. Those are collapsed timelines. We think this is the finite, this is the truth. All those people, that was the finite, that was the truth. And look at that in every religion times 300 different religions. It's all the same. It's just a choice of a belief system. It doesn't make it standard in time, it makes experiential in the now. That's what
yeah,
memory gives us, experience. It doesn't give us certainty, it doesn't give us fact, it gives us experience. It's an asset, it's a tool. So our history shows us our own changes. You ever drove somewhere and then all of a sudden that thing in front of you is that's been there for your entire life is not there anymore, and you look around, you see it's maybe across the street or a couple buildings down. That's just shifting an earth. That's shifting a historical idea. You've moved over to where it's always been here, but your memory, your history says it's been here, but now it's over here.
Oh yeah.
That kind of idea.
I had the experience of a place or an access to a place. I've been several times, was not there. So I was visiting Cambodia, and we were in Phnom Kulen, and we went there many times until one time we took a excursion from there, and we took a road, and I remember that that road was not there. Vaguely, I have that memory, but the last time I was there was the road to go in the jungle and then to go to the lost city of Mahendra Parvata, which is one of the ancient places in right Khmer history. Um, and I know that previously that was not access. It was not there. I could not have gone there because that road was not there. So changing and all of that, yeah, and it's and then it's one of those instances where you try to say no, it must have been there. I just remember wrong. It just thought that I was not interested. But no, it was not there.
Yeah, don't sell
Simple.
yourself the story that it's wrong
Yeah,
or you might be mistaken. That's bullshit. You've never made a mistake in your life. You've only perceived yourself as a mistake or someone else making a mistake according to a standard. That's all. And that's just really, truly what it is in its simplest form. It's just an experience of the now. It
yeah.
shows us our
Um,
abilities,
yes,
history.
history. Yeah. Um, and it's simply that we come from a place where we have been taught history as something that is absolutely this way, right? So the exercise of being open to the change that history actually is, it's yeah, it's another thing that we have to exercise to allow ourselves to experience and to admit, right? To just accept it changed. It's changing, and
What's the fear of that acceptance for a lot of people? What happens if your history changes? Then you maybe feel that everything you have now is all bullshit. I think it's the
yeah,
stability thing that makes things difficult for people to accept the change. Because if they don't have something concrete and fact and it's supposed to be in the perfect order, their controlling ego says this is supposed to be how life is and it doesn't work out that way, then they have a problem with it. You know, I understand that's based on a success or failure, but I'm not talking about just the diminishments of that idea. I'm talking about the expansion of your entire history as yourself shifting all the time. Why do you need to control that? Why do we need to control anything? What's going to happen to an eternal being? Life. That's what's going to happen. Life. Just right now, life. You're having life. You're experiencing life, not a life. Life. So I think it's a great thing for us to dive into history. I watched this great, phenomenal video about this guy that did research back to like really old research on how the entire countries have changed and how they're positioning and politicals and the different religions around the world over this expanse of time. And it just shows you how volatile truths are. They're never permanent, they're experiential. You know, how many times a country's been remade, but in your mind, the country's always been that. The United States of America haven't been around 300 years yet, right? We're still young. 200 and some odd years, right?
Yeah.
Not very old. But before that, there was, nothing, right? There was whatever until we finally discovered. So our history entirely changed because we discovered. The Native Americans, what about their history? They've been there their whole lives. They're like, the Mayans, the Aztecs. They've been there the whole time. Their world's been going on. So we always have to look at the relevance of the now. And I use memory. I use my own memories, my own history. That helps me. If I remember an incident or something that's maybe something for me to look at as a potential of transcendence. So maybe I felt embarrassed about an action that I said or took, and I'm living it in the now, or I was upset about something about another, but I'm living it in the now and thinking about that memory, that history. Well, see, it's not about that external idea that happened then, it's about what's occurring to me now. So my memory, being a tool, being an asset, draws up an idea of a friction that lies inside of me, and it identifies it, or I identify it, I attract it through a memory that I can perceive and relate to, therefore giving me my experiential feeling about my own created reality, not about the object of what happened 10 years ago or 5 years ago. It's about what I'm experiencing right now. So it's a very, very good tool. It's an asset. Go ahead, Max.
I was just thinking about one interesting thing about what you were saying about America and the discovery of America, which is also linked what to it became possible from the moment where it became aware of uh, Earth being a sphere, right? That we can go around it, because before it was believed that it was flat.
It was flat. We never had a round Earth. Although we're looking up in the
Yeah.
sky seeing everything is round, but no, our Earth is flat.
But there is one thing very interesting in Tolkien work, and that is that he's saying that Earth was flat up until the moment uh, um, Louis Vuitton following a fight or something,
Yes.
decided to make it a sphere. So I said, right, it's wow. And it's the only one that I know of that has that approach of saying, yeah, it was flat until it was made a sphere. Uh, and I was thinking, look how far, how deep this creator, this being has gone in his understanding of these things. And it's funny how it's presented that way, right? Go
Well,
ahead.
what I love is the validity of my usage of covet. If you're living on Earth and you got no telescopes and you're an ascending species and you have sentient and you start surviving caveman and you move into Homo erectus, Homo erectus, anything that we are, we. Oh, you shouldn't have laughed. That smile on your face. All right, folks, hang on. I gotta have a laugh. Okay, stop it, Max. He's like, breathe, breathe. Okay, so if we look at that, how would we not know the Earth is flat? That's all we could see. We saw a round thing in the sky called the moon, which, by the way, some idiot wrote in a book that was the moon was discovered around 1600. So before 1600, no one ever saw it. Fucking arrogance of people. Jesus. So, anyways, um, maybe it was the first time someone decided to write it down with some authority that could say, look what I found. Here's the moon. Oh, that thing up there? Oh, okay, yeah. It just discovered. Okay, yeah. So what I like about this idea about coveting is, of course, it's got to be flat because that's all we saw. And then we walked up to the edge of the waters. There was nowhere else to go. And we got boats to go into the waters. And then we go and found some other land. And then all of a sudden, hey, here comes someone that says, I think the earth says she's around, not flat like your head. So they, they changed the perspective by exploring and offering. So we're constantly always changing. These people are like, you tell them back then you tell them the earth is round, they think you're nuts. Well, they thought he was nuts, that kind of idea. But he wasn't. He's going to sail off the end and fall into whatever they've imagined. So it's the idea of coveting. And what I like about this, and we'll reference it to God, we have to have a God. Okay, so maybe we'll go back to zero. In order for me to know I'm a God, a creator, if you're listening to this and you're not on board with being a God, this might struggle you a little bit, but just pretend and just play in the reindeer games for a moment. So how do we know we're gods unless we covet? How do we know the earth is flat, round, unless we see it, potentialize it, right? We have to have the change represented. So what happened? So look at the Egyptians. Before they had gods, they got a god. They got big, ugly gods, scary gods. And the Mayans, they got gods. They got these aliens, they got what they called gods. It was an outside idea that was greater than them. And it turned into a mythical being. The Hathors, they thought were gods. The Hathors visited Earth. There's pictures of them all over the idea of the writings. Over in the Mayans, they have the ideas of spaceships and everything. So these were gods. We have to represent God so we attract the change. We attract the change. Society attracts change. We attracted COVID, we attracted Trump. These are ideas of change. We're attracting Elon Musk. He's an idea of change. Bezos. Is that how you say his name? Amazon guy?
Yes, yes, yeah.
He's change. Steve Jobs was change. But you're change. You're the change of your world. Don't worry about the mass psyche. Don't look at it defined like that. So we got a whole bunch of gods, and the Egyptians started giving all these gods, but it gave us God. And then we had the God of Abraham, which, Moses and that whole story plays out to many gods to one God. Now the God is us. The God is in. The kingdom of heaven lies within. That's the evolution we're seeing. As above, as below. Before the God of Abraham, you had to go to a wall. But now we can go to the Christ conscious in your heart. So as above, as below. So we give ourselves that movement away from the outside God to the inside God by representing the Christ conscious. We represent it. It didn't stick with horse, so we gave us the Christ conscious. We attracted that potential. And there were many Christ conscious potentials. There were many stories going on in the same timeline, 13 or 14 different potentials, all in the idea of different timelines because we're ascending a species. So these are all part of our ideas of moving the collective in consciousness truth, of shifting, of changing our truths. And we can't do that with preaching. We do that with representation. We show them it's possible. Easiest one is the 4-minute mile. We're destroying the 4-minute mile. It was impossible. Can't get to the moon. We didn't go to the moon first. First, we shot ourselves up in the air. Then we went around the earth a couple times. Now let's go to the moon. Now we're going to go to Mars. We have possibilities. Hilton hotels, whatever you call them, have started their ideas about their hotel in space. I just read about it today. They're planning, they're designing, they're out there. All that's happening. This is an evolution of a species, but it was never impossible. It was just, a lot of people said it was impossible. It was never impossible. But we represented these ideas. We started representing these ideas. Without propulsion, we would have never gotten to space. So we want to go to space. We want to have propulsion. So we created propulsion. We did it in the form of combustion. Okay, so it works. we'll evolve that too. We'll get electricity, we'll get maybe ion emittance or something like that. I don't know what the hell we're going to go. I'm not worried about it. Collective's going to take care of itself. What I'm doing is focus on my life and seeing my ideas change and how I change my job, my mind. My job is to change my beliefs and eradicate all my beliefs to my knowing, and then my reality changes. You ever, I bet some of you out there right now had friends that you were no idea that they're gone, can't even remember. And then all of a sudden someone comes in your life and you're like, oh my God, I completely forgot about that. No, you shifted away from their earth. They're over on this earth and you're on this earth. You moved yourself back into the psyche of that person being part of your world. That's all. There's nothing that we have to manage again. Don't make yourself an ego superhero and try to map this all out. Don't map out creation. Enjoy the ride. Don't make things hard on you. Let go. Resistance is slipstream. Relax. Take a stroll. Go ahead.
Well, there's this idea that we were created at the image of God, right? From the image of God, and I always say, well, the image of God must be God itself. How can you have the image of God without being God? So that idea, right? If you struggle with that, it's even brought to us into the Bible, for instance, in the creation, right? So that there is something in that of that in there also. So it's not that we that this idea comes from nowhere of that is absent and never come along, right? It's there, it's over there. There are plenty of examples of writings or of saying or of anything, many things that are bringing up this, even though it may not be exactly what that is used for, or what they want to convey, or maybe it's there just because it's lit, or there isn't a full understanding of the meaning of those things. um, but it's out there, and so also the experience that we are having, that we have, the way we are now, um, in our existence, in our reality. Well, there are many of instances that are comforting or supporting or whatever you want this, um, this being, this godness, that we are gods. And then one thing that I like to highlight with that, but you have just to let go then of the idea of God that is conveyed by religion. Because if you take that idea of God, then you are more confused than anything else, right? Because our godness is simply our state of being, what we are, and there's then no religion attached to that. But then, hey, everyone has their point of view and their relationship with this. So be it. There's You have to express it the way you want to, right? And go ahead.
No, I was going to say when you said that, just, whatever your truth is in a moment is the version of yourself that you are now. And you can hold that version through your memory, through your history. We take pride in careers. We think that longevity means something because it's just a way to identify your pride, your hard work, your resilience of stabilizing. All that it truly is a choice, folks. Everyone else is having their lives, whether you're having it or not. You got to understand their lives are going on. You comparing yourself is an experience of your human journey. You priding yourself that no one or someone validates is irrelevant. The fact that in and of itself that you are keeping yourself in a certain posture, using your memory, is how you keep your reality the same. So that's how history repeats itself, is because you choose to keep it. You know? So don't
Yeah.
worry about what you were. Be what you are. Of course, it's challenging as you're going to go up against family and friends and works and kibbles and bits, oh my, and all these things, and your mind is going to go ape shit because you're not being the person you're supposed to be, or you're not doing what you're expected to be, and maybe you'll be disappointed to someone else, or you'll let someone else down, or you're an inconvenience. All of these are sales jobs of the history that you've acquired over this journey. So the memory is showing you your choices, not what you are. It's your choice of to be that. You are always undefined in the moment, unconditional. You choose the moment for yourself. Know these words. Go ahead, Max.
Yeah. And what is your history, and what you are bringing from that, whether it's your family history, your personal history, or your let's say ancestral uh, older lives, whatever you may relate to in the moment, uh, then that is there for you to let go. It's not for you to hold. It's something that you let go. Because then, if you don't let go, that's where you repeat history. That's where you hold yourself in that cycle of repeating, right? Energies and all of that. I have an example for that. There's in my family energy that comes, right? My grandmother, my mother, my great grandmother had, which was a history of violence and giving that generationally and all of that. So when it came to me in my early uh, years, right, growing up and then living without my family and all that, um, I I was asked, do you want children? Do you want to have children? And I always said, I don't think it's a right thing for me. And I also had an opportunity of having children, because I had this couple of lesbians that wanted to have children, and I know that they wanted to ask me to participate into that. And I know that I was not ready. I didn't want to, but also because I was feeling that I will not have been able to handle that, right? Because I was holding on that history of my family of violence against children and all of that, and I didn't know at that point if I would have been able not to repeat what I experienced with my mother. So that it was my truth back then, right? And in my memory, it's my truth. In my history, it's my truth, but it's not anymore. Now I see that, I've understood that, and I've released that, I let go of that, and I know that now if I had a child, it would be completely a different story, because I'm not related to that history. I'm not holding that history anymore. It's gone. It's released, right?
Let's
So that is what I meant. Go
no, it's
ahead. Sorry.
perfect. What I wanted to say is look how humanity as a collective holds people accountable for their history. We've destroyed
Oh
people's
yeah,
careers because of their history. If they're
yeah,
carrying it on still in the day, I can see that. But someone tweeted something 20 years ago, or they said something 20 years ago, and they hold them accountable today.
Oh yeah,
because it's
totally.
not about what they did. They're just looking for energy of drama. I need to identify.
Yes.
I'm going to be a hero and call you out because you're not being a very good person. We're all fucking train wrecks down here if we look at the idea of polarity. Every single one of us. There's not one of us without sin. I guarantee you that because it's all crossed our minds. Because we're sharing in a mass collective of polarity. So we hold these ideas accountable for their histories. If they're still
Yeah.
currently doing, okay, I get that. You know? And it's a bad,
Yeah, but
if they've changed, you know that vibration. And
yeah.
I'm not saying what they're doing is right or wrong. I'm not saying, I'm just looking at the big picture here. Look how we go after people and something in time. It doesn't matter if they're doing it, to be heroes, but I'm just telling you what we have access to and what humans do.
Mhm.
And it's not
I've
wrong that
seen
they're
something
just,
like that today.
what's that?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just,
No, I've seen something like that today.
okay.
That in a video they were commenting on the Ring of Powers, and there is this black actor in there, and to discredit the diversity of the cast, they were showing um, a show or something, a program that this black actor did years ago, where they were um, interpret or giving a interpretation of Chinese or Asian characters. Right, this black actor with right uh, like a Chinese character, and they were saying, "Oh, you see this actor, what they did back then, uh, and now they want to be representative of the black community and as right." And it was a yeah, but that was what 10, 15 years ago. That doesn't disprove their work now, what they're doing, and right to
But
what
they
you
want
were
to hold
saying.
them accountable because anything to make themselves feel emotionally identified, they go after.
Yeah, yeah.
So here's a guy who did something and did something for an idea because he's hungry and he needs work and he's pursuing his career and he takes a role and now that role is criticized 20 years later. So they want to discredit and flush this guy for doing his truth in the moment. See, our history gives us access. There's so many ways to look at reality. It's all unconditional how we assign it. It's up to us. But the mass collective right now is beating people up. We've turned into a bunch of bullies. And that's fine. Because then we're going to work out our separation through those ideas for a while. You know?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. We don't feed into that. We represent our world. Just like when we needed gods, we got gods. Just like we wanted to know that Earth was round, we got Columbus.
Yeah.
I want to understand creation. I attracted things in my reality that said, here's what creation's like. I'm continuing to evolve.
Yeah.
I keep attracting those representations. So I don't represent polarity. I represent the unconditional ascender, the enlightener of the self. That's my rodeo. Everyone else has their own rodeo. It's irrelevant what you choose. Because in the grand scheme of things, it's all unconditional. So who the hell's judging? Nobody. No one's in charge.
Well, and that I could say thank God for that. But yeah, no one is in charge, and it's one thing that to people coming to this or even not really aware, it's one of the things that is the most difficult to understand. No one is in charge. Yeah, right. There is this need, this looking, this expectation of having this power, overpower that is there, And I realized, right, for instance, in movies and all of that, there is a representation of reality where, oh, the bad guy is punished. There is punishment and, right, happy ending, and things are uh, always going like that. Whereas, right, in reality, uh, there's not how things are. And maybe that's there in movies because people need to believe that, to have that representation to make them feel better. Whereas, well, if you look in history, right, if well, there, no one is in charge, so no one is punishing anyone, even though there is this need, oh,
They have the
you'll be
hope that they're being
punished.
punished. They want them to
Yeah,
be
because in
punished.
the end,
Well, what's happening is
exactly.
they're experiencing that reality in the now. Everyone is
Yeah,
experiencing the rodeo right now, here and now.
yeah,
That's fantastic.
isn't it? Uh, and yeah, and that's the end game, right? It's that we're punishing ourselves, or people punish themselves. Is that idea because they're wicked and sinners, and so there is only one thing for those people, and that is punishment. And they have invented the eternal punishment because being punished
Yeah, for all eternity.
is not enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you got to do it forever.
Yes.
Yeah, you come down here, you don't know anything. You create a world of lack. You suppress people from their own idea of flowering. The ones who manage to get out are revered. The ones who stay low are used as workers. And the ones who fuck up get to go to hell for eternity, burn in the eternal lake fire. What a
Exactly.
great show we've given ourselves.
Oh yeah.
I think it's time to
It's
change. I'm changing.
oh yeah.
Represent the
We
change.
I was going to say it's a need. No, it's not a need, but it's simply, I think it's simply being kind to the self, right? To you, to yourself, to love yourself, to change that. Because in the end of the day, you're doing that to yourself. That hatred, that opposition, that sinner punishment. It's what we do to ourselves. And so there's a need for each one of
It's a,
us to
it's a,
change that.
it's a huge story of fear. But that's an idea for us to see, to recognize within ourselves our own fears. You know, this external
Yeah.
person that's God that's supposed to be unconditional is going to punish you because you did something
Yeah.
wrong. But if you did all these things wrong, as long as you love his son, then everything is right. And not only that, you can keep going wrong because you're already saved. Look at the internal story. You must
Yeah.
see that these are representations of the internal, whether they're externalized through one religion or another, or someone speaking on stage and about the, it's all representation. So we can recognize our own limitations, our own conditionings,
Mhm. Beautiful.
history, memory, monumental. Very good,
Oh yeah.
Max. Anything else?
Yes. No.
I think that's it.
We're coming to the end. Yeah, that's it. So we are saying goodbye to for today. Thank you for joining in, and thank you, Roxy.
You're
Always a
welcome.
pleasure. Always wonderful. Always so insightful and fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And well, let's go ahead and tell them where they can find you, Breakfast with Max.
breakfastwithmax.com, my website, and also YouTube. And you, Roxy?
I'm available for viewing pleasure on odysseyofascension.com, on YouTube, and of course, website as well.
Oh, yeah, let me ask you, how are going the classes?
Classes are awesome. I offer classes every Wednesday, 7 p.m. Central Time, Central Standard Time in America. I don't know what that is, Greenwich Mean Time, GMT, or whatever. So, anyways, and all the information's on odysseyofascension.com under classes. So if you're interested in some of the ideas I have to teach, check out my YouTube as well as the classes. And that's it.
All right, so now we are off. Thank you and see you next time.
Thanks
Bye bye.
everyone for joining in. Take care.